What if the reason you're struggling financially has nothing to do with your work ethic, your intelligence, or even the economy, but everything to do with a sacred piece of knowledge that has been hidden from you your entire life? I know that sounds like a bold claim, but stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might completely transform the way you think about money, wealth, and abundance forever. There's a sacred book that exists in this world, one that holds ancient wisdom so profound, so transformative, that it only reveals itself to those who are truly ready to receive its message. This isn't some mystical fairy tale or spiritual fantasy. This is about understanding that wealth operates on frequencies and principles that most people never discover simply because they've been conditioned to look in all the wrong places. Has this ever happened to you? You wake up every morning, push through exhausting workdays, follow every piece of financial advice from experts, save diligently, cut unnecessary expenses, maybe even invest in the stock market or start a side business. And yet, month after month, year after year, you find yourself stuck in the exact same financial position. The numbers barely change. The debt feels like it's growing rather than shrinking. And that dream of true financial freedom, it keeps slipping further away, like trying to hold water in your hands. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, here's what most people don't understand, and what this sacred book reveals with absolute clarity. You're not failing because you're not trying hard enough. You're not stuck because you lack discipline or intelligence. The truth is far more profound and, frankly, far more liberating than anything you've been told before. The real reason wealth continues to elude you has nothing to do with external circumstances, market conditions, or even opportunities. It has everything to do with something invisible, something operating beneath your conscious awareness every single moment of every single day. Your subconscious mind is running a program right now, making thousands of decisions without you even realizing it. And if that program is filled with limiting beliefs about money, beliefs you didn't consciously choose, but absorbed from childhood, from society, from every authority figure who told you that money doesn't grow on trees, or that you have to work yourself to exhaustion to earn every penny, then no amount of external effort will ever produce the breakthrough you're desperately seeking. What you're about to learn transcends traditional financial advice because it addresses something far deeper, the invisible programming that's been sabotaging your success from the inside out. This sacred book doesn't appear by accident. It appears when you're finally ready to understand that true wealth isn't something you chase or force into existence through sheer willpower. True wealth is something you become ready to receive by transforming the very foundation of how your mind perceives abundance. And the moment that transformation begins, everything in your reality begins to shift in ways that might seem almost magical to everyone watching from the outside, but are actually the natural result of aligning your inner world with the frequency of abundance. Let me share something with you that completely changed my perspective on this journey. For years, I believed that the path to wealth was paved with sacrifice, endless hours of work, and pushing myself beyond every limit. I thought if I could just work a little harder, learn one more strategy, master one more skill, eventually I would break through to that level of financial freedom I was seeking. And you know what happened? Very little. Sure, there were small improvements here and there, temporary wins that felt good for a moment, but nothing substantial, nothing that created the kind of lasting transformation I truly desired. The breakthrough came when I discovered something that most people never learn in their entire lives. Hard work alone is not the answer. In fact, working harder from the wrong foundation is like trying to Fill a bucket that has holes in the bottom. No matter how much water you pour in, it will never stay full because the fundamental structure is flawed. The real answer to financial freedom has nothing to do with finding better investment strategies, learning secret stock market tricks, or grinding yourself into exhaustion with multiple income streams. The truth is far more profound and far more accessible than any of that. Wealth begins with a complete transformation of your subconscious. Programming around money. This isn't just theory or motivational fluff. This is backed by neuroscience and observable reality. Your subconscious mind is the most powerful force in your life, and it's running the show whether you realize it or not. Scientists estimate that your subconscious makes approximately 95% of your daily decisions without you even being aware of it. Think about what that means for a moment. Only 5% of your choices, behaviors, and reactions are coming from your conscious, logical mind. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority, is being controlled by programming that was installed years ago, most of it before you even had the capacity to question or reject it. If this resonates with you and you want to keep diving deeper into how consciousness creates wealth, go ahead and subscribe. I'm here exploring these principles that actually work at the subconscious level, and I'd love to have you on this journey with me. This programming, it came from everywhere. It came from your parents, who repeated what they heard from their parents. It came from teachers who were simply passing along the beliefs of their generation. It came from society, from media, from every authority figure in your childhood who made casual comments about money that your young mind absorbed as absolute truth. When someone told you that money doesn't grow on trees, that you have to work hard for every penny, that rich people are greedy, or that you should just be grateful for what you have, your subconscious mind recorded those statements as fundamental laws of reality. And here's the devastating part. If that programming is filled with limiting beliefs about scarcity, struggle, and unworthiness around money, then no amount of external effort, no matter how intense or well-intentioned, will ever produce the breakthrough you're seeking. You could have access to the best financial education in the world, the most lucrative opportunities, the perfect business model, and still find yourself sabotaging your own success because your subconscious programming is working against your conscious desires. This is why you see people who seem to do everything right, yet remain stuck in the same financial position year after year. It's not about effort, it's about alignment, it's about the hidden programming running beneath the surface, making decisions that keep you safely within the boundaries of what your subconscious believes is possible for you, what it believes you deserve, what it believes is safe for someone like you to have. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding how this subconscious programming actually operates in your daily life, because once you see the mechanism clearly, you gain the power to change it. Your subconscious doesn't think in words or logic the way your conscious mind does. It operates through feelings, patterns, and associations that were formed during your most impressionable years. Every time you interact with money, whether you're paying bills, checking your bank account, or considering a purchase, your subconscious is running a program in the background that determines how you feel, what you believe is possible, and ultimately what actions you take or don't take. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to reprogram," if this is resonating with your experience and you're beginning to see how your subconscious might have been running the show all along. These patterns are so automatic, so deeply embedded, that they feel like just who you are, rather than learned behaviors that can be transformed. And this is where most people get stuck in a cycle of temporary motivation, followed by inevitable return to their old financial reality. I need you to understand something crucial here, because this is where so many people waste years of their lives chasing solutions that can never work. What I'm sharing with you has nothing to do with positive thinking in the way most people understand it. This isn't about standing in front of a mirror repeating affirmations that feel hollow and fake, trying to convince yourself you're wealthy when every fiber of your being knows your bank account tells a different story. That approach doesn't work because it's superficial. It's like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house with a crumbling foundation and expecting the structure to suddenly become solid. What we're talking about here is something far deeper and far more powerful. This is about genuine scientific reprogramming of the neural pathways and belief systems that have been unconsciously sabotaging your financial success your entire life. Modern neuroscience has revealed something extraordinary. Your brain is not fixed. It's not permanently wired in childhood and stuck that way forever. Your brain has what scientists call neuroplasticity, which means it can be rewired, reshaped, and reprogrammed at any age, in any circumstances, once you understand how to access and work with the subconscious patterns that are currently running your life. The sacred book that I mentioned earlier, the one that appears when you're ready to receive its wisdom, doesn't teach you tricks or hacks or shortcuts. It reveals a systematic method for accessing the deepest layers of your consciousness and installing new programming that aligns with abundance rather than scarcity, with possibility rather than limitation, with worthiness rather than the quiet shame so many people carry around money, without even recognizing it's there. This is the hidden truth that changes everything. True financial transformation has absolutely nothing to do with budgeting strategies, investment portfolios, or side hustles. Those things have their place, certainly, but they're secondary factors, surface-level tactics that can only work effectively when the foundation beneath them is solid. You can have the most brilliant financial strategy in the world, but if your subconscious programming is telling you that you don't deserve wealth, that money is evil, that rich people are corrupt, or that financial success means you'll lose connection with the people you love, then you will find a way to sabotage every opportunity that comes your way. The real starting point of transformation, the place where lasting change actually begins, is deep within your subconscious mind, in the hidden programming that's been quietly directing your financial reality since childhood. This programming operates like an invisible operating system running in the background of your life, making thousands of micro-decisions every single day that keep you locked into familiar patterns, even when those patterns are causing you pain and limitation. Think about it this way. Your conscious mind might desperately want financial freedom, might set ambitious goals, might work incredibly hard to achieve them. But if your subconscious mind was programmed 20, 30, 40 years ago to believe that people like you don't have wealth, that money causes problems, that you're not capable of managing abundance, then there's an internal conflict happening beneath your awareness. And in that conflict, the subconscious always wins because it's so much more powerful than conscious willpower. This is why New Year's resolutions fail. This is why people go back to their old financial habits even after experiencing temporary success. This is why lottery winners often end up broke within a few years. The external circumstances changed, but the internal programming remained the same, and eventually the external reality reorganized itself to match the internal blueprint that was never updated. The journey to genuine wealth isn't about acquiring more information or trying harder with the same old approaches. It's about transformation at the identity level, about becoming someone different at the core, someone whose natural frequency aligns with abundance rather than struggle. And that transformation requires you to go behind the scenes of your own mind, to examine the beliefs and patterns you've never questioned, to recognize that what you thought was just your personality is actually programming that can be rewritten. Drop a comment saying, "I see the pattern now," if you're beginning to recognize how these hidden programs might have been shaping your financial reality without you even knowing it. The moment you understand this distinction between surface-level action and deep transformation, you begin to see the world through completely different eyes. And nowhere is this more evident than in the stories of people who have experienced this shift firsthand, people whose lives look so radically different now that others often assume they got lucky or stumbled into some secret opportunity that isn't available to everyone else. Let me tell you about Maria, because her story illustrates this principle with perfect clarity. Maria was a single mother, working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on and food on the table for her kids. She was waking up before dawn, working through exhaustion, sacrificing time with her children, doing everything society tells you to do when you're trying to climb out of financial struggle. She was responsible, disciplined, hard-working by every conventional measure. And yet month after month, she was barely surviving, watching her bank account hover dangerously close to zero, feeling that constant knot of anxiety in her stomach every time an unexpected expense appeared. Then something shifted. Maria didn't win the lottery. She didn't receive some unexpected inheritance from a distant relative. She didn't stumble into a high-paying job or launch some revolutionary business idea. What changed was far more fundamental and far more powerful than any of those external circumstances. Maria discovered the hidden truth about subconscious programming and began the inner work of transforming her relationship with money at the deepest level. Within less than 6 months, her income had tripled, not because she was working more hours or hustling harder, but because she had changed who she was being internally. The transformation radiated outward, affecting every decision she made, every opportunity she noticed, every conversation she had. She started seeing possibilities that had been invisible to her before. She began advocating for herself in ways that felt natural rather than desperate. She attracted circumstances and connections that aligned with her new internal frequency. The external world simply reorganized itself to match the profound shift that had happened inside her consciousness. What Maria experienced wasn't magic or wishful thinking. It was the natural result of aligning her subconscious programming with abundance instead of scarcity, with possibility instead of limitation, with worthiness instead of the quiet resignation she had carried for so long without even recognizing it was there. Then there's Carlos, whose journey reveals another dimension of this truth. Carlos was an entrepreneur with big dreams and genuine talent, but he had experienced 3 devastating business failures in a row. Each venture started with hope and momentum. Each one seemed like it might finally be the breakthrough he was seeking, and each one collapsed in ways that left him emotionally and financially devastated. By the time he was considering his 4th attempt, he was on the verge of giving up entirely, convinced that success simply wasn't meant for him, that some people are destined for wealth while others are doomed to struggle no matter how hard they try. But something made him pause before abandoning his dreams completely. He stumbled upon this hidden knowledge about subconscious programming and wealth manifestation, and for the first time in his life, he began to understand why his previous attempts had failed despite his intelligence, effort, and genuine passion. The problem wasn't his. Business strategies or market timing or any of the external factors he had been obsessing over. The problem was his subconscious identity, which had been programmed from childhood to see himself as someone who struggles, someone who almost succeeds but never quite breaks through, someone whose worth comes from fighting against obstacles rather than flowing with abundance. If something clicked for you today, if you had one of those aha moments where things suddenly made sense, let me know by tapping that like button. It helps me understand what's landing with you and keeps this content reaching the people who need it most. Once Carlos recognized this pattern and began the work of reprogramming at the identity level, everything changed. His 4th business didn't just survive through willpower and determination. It thrived in ways that exceeded his wildest expectations. The financial flow he had been desperately chasing for years suddenly came naturally, effortlessly, as if invisible barriers had simply dissolved. And the most remarkable part, he was working fewer hours, experiencing less stress, and enjoying the journey in ways that had been impossible when he was operating from his old programming. These aren't anomalies or special cases that only work for certain lucky people. Maria and Carlos are ordinary individuals who discovered something extraordinary about how reality actually works. They learned that your external financial circumstances are always, without exception, a mirror reflection of your internal subconscious programming. And when you change the programming, when you transform who you are at the deepest level, the external reality has no choice but to reorganize itself to match. Type "transformation is possible" in the comments if these stories are helping you see that your own financial breakthrough might be closer than you think, waiting on the other side of this internal shift. What makes these transformations so powerful, so undeniable, is that they reveal a fundamental principle that most people live their entire lives without ever discovering. This isn't some obscure spiritual concept or unproven theory. This is observable, repeatable, verifiable truth that plays out in every person's life, whether they're aware of it or not. Your external financial reality is always, in every moment, a direct mirror reflection of your internal subconscious programming. There are no exceptions to this rule. There are no lucky people who somehow bypass this mechanism. The only difference is whether you're creating your reality consciously or unconsciously, intentionally or by default. Think about what this really means. The bank account balance you're looking at right now, the financial stress you might be carrying, the limitations you're experiencing around money, none of these are random occurrences or the result of bad luck or an unfair economy. They're precise reflections of the programming running beneath your conscious awareness, beliefs, and patterns that were installed so long ago you don't even remember learning them. And here's the liberating part. When you change the programming, when you genuinely transform those deep subconscious patterns, the external reality must change to match it. It's not optional. It's not something that works for some people and not others. It's how the system operates. But here's where most people encounter their greatest obstacle. And it's so invisible, so deeply embedded, that they don't even recognize it as the source of their struggle. Your conscious mind right now might desperately want financial freedom. You might have clear goals, strong motivation, genuine determination to change your circumstances. But your conscious desires are being constantly, relentlessly sabotaged by subconscious beliefs that were installed before you had the capacity to think critically about them, before you could question whether they were actually true or just stories. Passed down through generations of people who also struggled with money. These beliefs didn't come from you. You didn't sit down one day and decide to limit yourself financially. These patterns were absorbed during your most formative years, imprinted on your developing mind when you were too young to filter or reject them. They came from your parents, who were simply passing along the programming they received from their parents. If your parents struggled with money, if they argued about finances, if they expressed anxiety or frustration or shame around wealth, your young mind recorded all of that as fundamental truth about how money works. You absorb not just their words, but their emotions, their tensions, their fears, their limitations. Your teachers reinforced these patterns, often without any malicious intent. When they said things like money doesn't grow on trees, or you have to work hard for every penny, or only a few people get to be rich while most people struggle, they were teaching you what they believed to be practical wisdom. But to your subconscious mind, these statements became operating instructions, rules about reality that would shape your decisions and perceptions for decades to come. Society added layer upon layer of programming on top of that foundation. Media, culture, religious teachings, peer groups, all of them contributing to a complex web of beliefs about money that most people never examine because they feel like just the way things are. Wealth is associated with greed, with corruption, with being disconnected from what really matters in life. Rich people are portrayed as villains or fools who lose their souls in pursuit of material gain. Success is suspicious, abundance is somehow shameful, and struggling nobly with limited resources is virtuous. All of this programming operates beneath your conscious awareness, making decisions for you, filtering opportunities before they even reach your conscious mind, sabotaging your efforts in ways you don't recognize until you learn to see the pattern. And the devastating part is that this programming feels like your identity, like just who you are, rather than learned behaviors that can be transformed. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding how these specific childhood patterns manifest in your adult financial life, because once you can identify them clearly, you gain the power to change them. These aren't abstract concepts. These are concrete, observable patterns that you can recognize in your own behavior once you know what to look for. Patterns that have been running your financial life on autopilot for years without you even noticing. Comment below, "I'm breaking the pattern," if you're starting to recognize how programming from your past might be creating your present financial reality. The patterns we're talking about here operate through a mechanism that most people never understand. And once you grasp this, it explains so much about why certain people seem to attract wealth effortlessly, while others work themselves into exhaustion with minimal results. Here's the truth that might sound strange at first, but I need you to hear this with an open mind because it completely transformed my understanding of how prosperity actually works. Money has its own language. I don't mean this metaphorically or poetically. I mean it quite literally. Money operates according to specific universal laws, vibrational frequencies, and energetic patterns that most people never learn to speak or understand. And here's the fascinating part. Those who struggle most desperately for wealth are often the ones pushing it furthest away from themselves simply because they're speaking the wrong language entirely. Think about it like this. Imagine trying to have a conversation with someone who only speaks French, but you're shouting at them louder and louder in English, convinced that if you just work harder at communicating, make your voice more intense, put more effort into your words, eventually they'll understand you. That's essentially what most people are doing with money. They're working harder, hustling more intensely, sacrificing more of their time and energy, all while speaking a language that money simply doesn't respond to. The desperation, the struggle, the fear-based effort, these are frequencies that actually repel abundance rather than attract it. This revelation didn't come from some modern self-help guru or motivational speaker. The origins of this knowledge trace back over a century to a man whose story reads almost like legend, yet it's documented history. He was a prosperous businessman who had everything that society tells you represents success: wealth, status, influence, all the external markers that we're taught to pursue. Then, in a devastating financial collapse, he lost it all. Everything he had built, every material possession, every piece of security gone in what seemed like an instant. Now, most people in his position would have simply tried to rebuild using the same strategies that brought them success the first time. They would have doubled down on what they knew, worked even harder, applied the same formulas with more intensity. But this man did something radically different, something that most people would never have the courage or humility to do. He recognized that losing everything was actually a gift in disguise, an opportunity to ask a question that most wealthy people never have the willingness to ask: what is wealth really? Not the surface-level mechanics of earning and investing, not the tactics and strategies that fill business books, but the fundamental essence of prosperity itself. What makes money flow towards certain people and away from others? Why do some individuals seem to attract abundance effortlessly, while others work themselves into exhaustion with minimal results? What's the hidden variable that creates such dramatically different outcomes for people who appear to be doing similar things? So he made a decision that most would consider extreme, perhaps even irrational. He withdrew from society completely, entering 7 years of total isolation, dedicating himself entirely to understanding not just the patterns of money, but its energetic nature, its hidden laws, its essential character. He wasn't studying finance or economics in the traditional sense. He was studying consciousness itself, energy, the universal principles that govern manifestation and abundance at the deepest levels. He was decoding the hidden language that money speaks, learning to understand prosperity as something far more profound than numbers in a bank account. During those 7 years of deep contemplation and study, he documented everything he discovered, and what emerged from his isolation was a manuscript so revolutionary, so transformative, that when he finally shared it with a small circle of people, they experienced such profound shifts in their financial reality that they could barely believe what was happening. These weren't people using new investment strategies or business tactics. They were people who had fundamentally reprogrammed their subconscious relationship with wealth, and their external circumstances were simply reorganizing themselves to match this new internal frequency. The most striking discovery this man made, the insight that became the foundation of everything else, was that sustainable wealth has almost nothing to do with what we've been taught. It's not about sacrifice or deprivation or endless toil. Those approaches might generate some temporary results, but they're ultimately built on a foundation that guarantees you'll always be fighting an uphill battle, always struggling, always feeling like you're one mistake away from losing it all. Right, I'm learning the language in the comments if this idea of money operating on frequencies and principles you've never been taught is beginning to make sense to you. Instead, true prosperity operates according to what he called the receptivity principle, and understanding this single concept can completely transform your relationship with money in ways that seem almost impossible until you experience it yourself. The receptivity principle states that wealth flows most powerfully toward those who have learned to receive it, not toward those who are desperately chasing it. This might sound counterintuitive, especially in a culture that glorifies hustle and grind, that tells you success requires sacrifice and struggle and pushing yourself beyond every limit. But consider the paradox carefully. The more frantically you pursue something, the more you're unconsciously declaring that you don't have it, that it's separate from you, that you're in a state of lack. And that energetic signature of lack, that frequency of desperation and need, is precisely what your subconscious mind then manifests as your lived reality. You're broadcasting scarcity while trying to attract abundance, speaking the language of poverty while hoping for wealth to respond, and wondering why the universe doesn't seem to hear your desperate pleas. The manuscript revealed something that changed everything for those who applied it, something that goes against every instinct we've been trained to follow. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you consciously say you want and what you're unconsciously vibrating at. It only responds to your dominant, energetic frequency, the signal you're broadcasting through your emotions, your beliefs, your habitual thought patterns. And if that frequency is rooted in struggle, scarcity and desperation, then no amount of positive thinking or goal setting will override those deeper patterns. This is why people can repeat affirmations all day long and see no results. This is why vision boards often fail to manifest anything meaningful. This is why working yourself into exhaustion doesn't necessarily lead to financial breakthrough. Because you're trying to apply surface-level solutions to a problem that exists at a much deeper level, trying to change your circumstances without changing the frequency that's creating those circumstances in the first place. The businessman's manuscript outlined specific patterns that wealthy individuals unconsciously embody, patterns that have nothing to do with their work ethic or intelligence or even their opportunities, but everything to do with their subconscious. Programming around receiving, deserving, and allowing abundance to flow. These people aren't fighting for wealth. They're not desperately pursuing it or anxiously trying to capture it. They've learned, often without consciously realizing it, how to become receptive channels through which prosperity naturally flows. Think about a river for a moment. The water doesn't struggle to reach the ocean. It doesn't push and force and exhaust itself trying to arrive at its destination. It simply flows along the path of least resistance, moving naturally, effortlessly, inevitably toward where it's meant to go. The river receives the water from tributaries along the way, becoming larger and more powerful, not through effort, but through openness, through receptivity, through allowing the natural process to unfold. This is the essence of what the manuscript teaches, and it's so different from everything we've been conditioned to believe that many people initially reject it as too simple, too passive, too unrealistic for the harsh realities of the modern world. But the results speak for themselves. The small circle of people who first received this knowledge experienced transformation so dramatic, so consistent, that they understood they had stumbled upon something genuinely revolutionary about how human consciousness interacts with material reality. These weren't people hoarding secrets for personal gain or trying to keep others down. They were individuals who recognized they had discovered a truth so powerful, so transformative, that it needed to be shared carefully, thoughtfully, with those who were ready to receive it without distorting or misusing it. Because here's what they understood: this knowledge in the wrong hands, or shared with people who aren't ready to understand its depth, can be easily misinterpreted as an excuse for passivity or entitlement, rather than the profound shift in consciousness that it actually represents. The receptivity principle isn't about sitting back and waiting for money to magically appear while you do nothing. It's about shifting from a state of desperate pursuit to a state of aligned action, from forcing to allowing, from pushing to flowing. It's about becoming the kind of person at the deepest identity level for whom wealth feels natural rather than foreign, for whom abundance is the expected state rather than the rare exception. Put "I'm becoming receptive" in the comments if you're beginning to sense how this shift from chasing to receiving could change everything about your financial experience. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding what these patterns actually look like in real life, because this is where the abstract becomes concrete, where the theoretical becomes immediately applicable to your own situation. When we talk about wealthy people embodying certain patterns unconsciously, we're not talking about secret handshakes or insider connections or advantages that only a privileged few can access. We're talking about something far more fundamental and far more accessible once you understand what you're looking for. These patterns exist at the level of identity, at the core of how someone perceives themselves in relation to money and abundance. A person operating from wealth consciousness doesn't wake up each morning thinking about whether they deserve prosperity or anxiously checking their bank account to confirm their worth. Their relationship with money is relaxed, confident, natural. They expect abundance, the same way you expect the sun to rise, not as something they have to earn through suffering, but as something that flows naturally when you're aligned with its frequency. This isn't arrogance or entitlement. It's a deep, often unconscious knowing that they are worthy of receiving, that opportunities will come, that resources will be available when needed. And here's what's so powerful about this: their expectation creates their experience, not through magic or wishful thinking, but through the way their subconscious mind filters reality, notices opportunities, makes decisions, and broadcasts a frequency that naturally attracts resonant circumstances. Compare this to someone operating from scarcity consciousness, and the contrast becomes stark. That person wakes up with anxiety about money, sees obstacles where others see possibilities, hesitates when opportunities appear because some part of them doesn't believe they deserve to win, broadcasts a frequency of lack that actually repels the very abundance they're desperately seeking. And the tragic part is that both patterns feel completely normal to the person experiencing them. The wealthy person's ease feels like just how life works. The struggling person's difficulty feels like just how reality is. Neither recognizes they're operating from programming that could be changed. What the manuscript revealed with shocking clarity is that some people seem to magnetize wealth without apparent effort, not because they're smarter or luckier or more talented, but because their subconscious programming is aligned with receiving rather than blocking, with abundance rather than scarcity, with worthiness rather than shame. They're not doing anything special that you can't do. They're being someone different at the identity level, and that difference in being creates a completely different experience of reality. This discovery challenged everything conventional wisdom teaches about success and wealth creation. We've been told that hard work is the key, that sacrifice builds character, that struggle is necessary for achievement. And while there's nothing wrong with dedicated effort, the manuscript exposed something that most people miss entirely. The quality of your consciousness while you're taking action matters infinitely more than the quantity of action you're taking. You can work 80 hours a week from a consciousness of fear and desperation, and you'll generate very different results than someone working 30 hours a week from a consciousness of confidence and alignment. The effort isn't the determining factor. The state of being from which that effort emerges is what creates your reality. This is the invisible factor that explains why two people with identical circumstances, identical opportunities, identical education can have such radically different financial outcomes. One person's subconscious programming tells them they're worthy of abundance, capable of success, deserving of prosperity. The other person's programming, installed long ago and never questioned, whispers that people like them don't get to have wealth, that success is for others, that they should be grateful for whatever scraps they can manage to gather. And both programs prove themselves right through the decisions they generate, the opportunities they notice or ignore, the actions they take or avoid, the frequencies they broadcast into the field of consciousness that surrounds them. The journey from scarcity consciousness to abundance consciousness isn't about acquiring new information or learning better strategies. It's about transformation at the deepest level, about dismantling the old programming that no longer serves you and installing new patterns that align with the financial reality you truly desire. And this sacred book that we've been discussing, this manuscript that emerged from 7 years of isolated contemplation, provides a systematic method for exactly that transformation. Type, consciousness creates reality. If this revelation about how your internal state determines your external circumstances is landing for you in a new way, the method works because it addresses something that most people never recognize as the root cause of their financial limitation. There's a lie that's so pervasive, so deeply woven into the fabric of our culture that most people accept it as fundamental truth without ever questioning whether it's actually real or just a story that's been repeated so many times, it feels like reality. This lie is the invisible prison that keeps millions of people locked in financial struggle for their entire lives, working hard, doing everything right according to conventional wisdom, and yet never experiencing the breakthrough they're seeking. The lie is this: money is scarce, difficult to obtain, and requires constant sacrifice and struggle to achieve. You've heard it expressed in 1,000 different ways. Throughout your life, Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard to earn a living. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You can't have your cake and eat it too. These aren't just casual observations about economics or harmless sayings that people repeat without thinking. These are programming statements that literally shape your subconscious beliefs about what's possible for you financially. Every time you heard an authority figure say these things during your formative years, your young mind absorbed them as fundamental truths about reality. Your parents repeated them not because they were trying to harm you, but because they had been programmed with the same beliefs by their parents who learned them from their parents, creating a generational chain of limitation that gets passed down unconsciously. Your teachers reinforced them because that's what they were taught. Society validated them at every turn through media, culture, religious teachings that suggested poverty was virtuous and wealth was spiritually dangerous. And slowly, without you even realizing what was happening, these statements became the invisible operating system through which you perceive and interact with money. They became the lens through which you filter every financial opportunity, every decision, every possibility. They became the frequency you broadcast into the world, the signal that tells the universe what you expect to receive. Here's the devastating impact of this. Programming, and this is where understanding becomes power. When your subconscious mind believes that money is scarce and difficult to obtain, it automatically filters your perception of reality to confirm that belief. This isn't conscious or intentional. It's how your brain works at the most fundamental level. Your mind seeks consistency between your beliefs and your experience, and it will actively distort your perception of reality to maintain that consistency. This means you literally stop seeing opportunities that are right in front of you because they don't match your internal programming. Your mind dismisses possibilities before they can even register consciously. Someone else might look at the exact same circumstances you're facing and see abundance, potential, multiple paths forward, but your programmed mind sees limitation, obstacles, reasons why things won't work. You're both looking at the same reality, but you're seeing completely different worlds because you're filtering through completely different belief systems. The self-fulfilling prophecy operates with mathematical precision. If you believe deep in your subconscious that wealth requires constant sacrifice and struggle, then your reality will consistently manifest experiences that confirm that belief, not because the universe is punishing you or because you're cursed or because you're unlucky, but because your subconscious mind is the primary creative force shaping your experience, and it's simply delivering exactly what you've programmed it to expect. You make decisions from a place of lack and limitation without even realizing you're doing it. When an opportunity appears, some part of you finds a reason to hesitate, to doubt, to play it safe. When a possibility for increased income emerges, you unconsciously sabotage it because receiving more would contradict your deeply held belief that money is scarce and hard to get. And most tragically, you work incredibly hard in ways that actually push abundance away from you, all while believing you're doing everything right. The energy of desperate effort, of anxious striving, of fearful pushing, these are frequencies that repel prosperity rather than attract it. You're broadcasting lack while hoping for abundance, speaking scarcity while praying for wealth, embodying struggle while dreaming of ease. And the universe, which responds to your vibrational frequency rather than your conscious wishes, keeps delivering more struggle because that's the signal you're sending. Comment, "I'm releasing scarcity," if you're beginning to recognize how this lie might have been operating in your own life, shaping your financial reality in ways you never consciously chose. But here's where the revelation becomes truly liberating, where the darkness of that lie gives way to a truth so powerful that once you truly grasp it, your entire relationship with money can transform almost overnight. The manuscript didn't just expose the lie about scarcity. It revealed the actual truth that wealthy individuals unconsciously know and operate from. the fundamental reality that changes everything once you understand it at a cellular level. Money isn't scarce at all. In fact, it's one of the most abundant resources in human civilization, constantly flowing, constantly circulating, constantly seeking places to land and multiply. There are trillions of dollars moving through the global economy every single day, changing hands, flowing from person to person, business to business, account to account. The appearance of scarcity is an illusion created by subconscious programming, not an objective feature of reality itself. It's a perceptual filter, not a universal truth. When you reprogram your subconscious to align with the truth of abundance rather than the lie of scarcity, your entire financial experience transforms. And this isn't wishful thinking or naive optimism. This is observable reality. Once you understand the mechanism, your perception changes, your decisions change, the opportunities you notice change, the actions you take change, the frequency you broadcast changes. And because all of these factors are what actually create your financial outcomes, your results must change to match this new internal alignment. Think about what money actually is at its most fundamental level, because this understanding alone can shift everything. We've been conditioned to think of money as a physical object, as bills and coins that you can hold and count, as something finite and limited that you must compete for against everyone else who wants it. But that's a surface-level understanding that completely misses the deeper reality of what money represents and how it actually functions in the world. Money in its purest essence isn't a limited resource that we must desperately compete for like animals fighting over scraps. That's the scarcity paradigm talking, the programming distorting your perception. Money is fundamentally an expression of energy, a representation of value, a flow that moves through human civilization according to specific principles and laws. It's constantly in motion, constantly seeking channels through which it can flow, constantly gravitating toward those who understand and align with its underlying nature. This might sound abstract, but it has immediate practical implications. When you understand money as energy, rather than as a limited physical commodity, you start to recognize that it's not about grabbing and hoarding and fighting to keep what you have. It's about becoming a clear channel through which abundance can flow. It's about aligning yourself with the natural currents of prosperity that are always moving, always available, always seeking people who can receive them without resistance or fear. The people who experience sustainable wealth, the kind that doesn't require constant struggle to maintain, aren't necessarily working harder than you or doing things that are fundamentally different from what you're doing. What's different is their relationship with money as energy. They've learned, often unconsciously, to let it flow through their lives rather than trying to grasp it desperately. They give value freely, expecting that more will come. They invest with confidence rather than fear. They make decisions from abundance consciousness rather than scarcity consciousness. And money responds to that frequency by flowing toward them naturally. This is why you sometimes see people who seem to generate wealth with minimal effort while others exhaust themselves and barely survive. It's not about fairness or luck or divine favor. It's about alignment with how money actually works as energy, as flow, as a responsive force that gravitates towards certain frequencies and away from others. The universe isn't playing favorites. It's simply responding to the vibrational signatures that different people are broadcasting through their subconscious beliefs, their emotional patterns, their habitual ways of being. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding what it actually means to align with money as energy, because this is where the transformation moves from intellectual understanding into embodied experience. This is where you stop just knowing these principles and start living them, where the knowledge becomes integrated into your nervous system and your automatic responses, rather than remaining as interesting ideas that don't change your actual behavior. Write "money flows to me" in the comments if you're starting to sense how this shift from viewing money as scarce commodity to abundant energy could fundamentally change your financial reality. The alignment process begins with recognizing something that might shock you at first, something that goes against every piece of conventional wisdom you've ever received about building wealth. We've had the entire equation backwards our whole lives. We've been taught that the path to abundance looks like this: work tirelessly, sacrifice constantly, deprive yourself of enjoyment, push through exhaustion, and maybe someday in the distant future, if you're lucky and disciplined enough, you'll finally enjoy financial freedom as a reward for all that suffering. This is the paradigm virtually everyone operates from, the story we've all been told and accepted as truth. And it's precisely why most people remain financially trapped despite their best efforts. They're following a map that leads nowhere because it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how prosperity actually manifests. They're trying to force abundance into existence through sheer willpower and suffering, broadcasting a frequency of struggle and lack, while hoping somehow that struggle will transform into ease and abundance at some magical future point. The truth, the revelation that changed everything for those who discovered it, is a complete inversion of this traditional paradigm. You don't have to work yourself into exhaustion first and then hope abundance eventually arrives as a reward for your suffering. Instead, you must first align yourself with the vibrational frequency of abundance. Establish that internal state of prosperity consciousness. And when you do that, the work you engage in naturally generates prosperous results without the constant struggle, without the grinding anxiety, without the feeling that you're pushing a boulder uphill every single day. This probably sounds counterintuitive, maybe even irresponsible or naive if you're hearing it for the first time. We've been so deeply conditioned to believe that struggle equals virtue, that suffering builds character, that anything worthwhile must be difficult and painful. But consider this carefully. Have you ever noticed that some people seem to generate wealth with a quality of ease and flow that feels almost unfair when you're struggling so hard yourself? They're not working more hours than you. They're often working significantly less. They're not smarter or more talented or better connected in most cases, yet money seems to find them naturally. Opportunities appear in their path without them desperately searching. Their ventures succeed where others with similar ideas fail. The difference isn't in their external actions or circumstances. The fundamental difference exists in their internal frequency, in the consciousness from which they're operating. They're functioning from abundance consciousness rather than scarcity consciousness, and that shift in foundation changes absolutely everything about how they experience financial reality. Their decisions flow from confidence rather than fear, from possibility rather than limitation, from worthiness rather than desperation. Their efforts are aligned with natural currents of prosperity rather than fighting against them, swimming with the river's flow rather than exhausting themselves trying to push upstream. They're not trying to force abundance into their lives through sheer willpower or prove their worthiness through suffering. They've become natural receivers of the abundance that's always flowing, always available, always seeking aligned channels through which to express itself. And this receptivity, this alignment, this internal frequency is something you can cultivate deliberately once you understand the mechanism. The sacred book reveals this truth with stunning clarity, showing you not just the theory, but the practical application. The specific techniques for shifting from struggle consciousness to flow consciousness. It teaches you how to recognize when you're operating from fear and scarcity so you can consciously choose a different state. It guides you through the process of dismantling the old programming that keeps you trapped in cycles of effort without reward, replacing those limiting patterns with new ways of being that naturally align with prosperity. This isn't about working less or avoiding responsibility or pretending everything is perfect when it's not. It's about fundamentally changing the quality of consciousness you bring to your work, your decisions, your interactions with money. It's about learning to operate from a place of inner abundance, regardless of your current external circumstances, trusting that when you establish that frequency internally, the external reality must eventually reorganize itself to match. Type, I choose flow over struggle. If this distinction between forcing and allowing, between fighting and flowing, is beginning to resonate with your own experience of how exhausting the traditional approach has been, the manuscript contains a story that perfectly illustrates this principle, and when I first encountered it, everything suddenly crystallized for me in a way that abstract concepts never could. There were two brothers raised in the exact same household by the same parents, exposed to the same economic circumstances, receiving identical education, having access to the same opportunities, living in the same community. On paper, if you were predicting their financial futures, you would expect them to end up in relatively similar places, maybe with some variation based on career choices or luck, but fundamentally comparable outcomes. Yet their financial realities became so diametrically opposed, so radically different, that it seemed like they were living in completely separate universes. The divergence wasn't gradual or subtle. It was stark, undeniable, the kind of difference that forces you to ask what invisible factor could possibly create such dramatically opposite results from such identical starting conditions. The first brother held firmly to the belief in scarcity, operating from the deep conviction that money was hard to get, that life was a constant struggle, that financial security required endless vigilance and sacrifice. And his lived experience perfectly reflected these beliefs with almost mathematical precision. He worked long hours that left him exhausted and depleted. He stressed constantly about bills and expenses. He felt like he was always fighting to stay afloat, never quite getting ahead no matter how hard he tried. Money flowed toward him grudgingly, reluctantly, and when it did arrive, it seemed to disappear almost immediately, consumed by unexpected expenses or financial emergencies that appeared with frustrating regularity. His entire relationship with money was characterized by tension, anxiety, and the exhausting feeling of swimming against a relentless current that was always pushing him backward. Every financial gain felt temporary and fragile. Every setback felt like confirmation that he was right to worry, that the world really was as difficult and scarce as he believed it to be. He was trapped in a self-reinforcing loop where his beliefs created his experience and his experience validated his beliefs, round and round in a cycle that seemed impossible to escape. The second brother, through what seemed like pure chance, but was probably something deeper, discovered the principles contained in the manuscript. He began applying them, reprogramming his subconscious beliefs about money, deliberately shifting his consciousness from scarcity to abundance, from struggle to flow, from unworthiness to natural receptivity. And what happened next appeared almost magical to everyone observing from the outside, especially to his brother, who couldn't understand how someone from the exact same background could experience such different results. Money began flowing toward him with an ease and naturalness that seemed to defy logic and contradict everything they'd been taught growing up. Opportunities materialized seemingly out of nowhere. His ventures succeeded where conventional wisdom suggested they should fail. He worked fewer hours than his struggling brother, experienced significantly less stress, and yet accumulated wealth at a rate that left people baffled and sometimes even resentful because it challenged their fundamental beliefs about how the world works. Here's what's crucial to understand about this story, because this is where the revelation moves from interesting anecdote to applicable truth. The difference between these two brothers had nothing to do with their external actions, their intelligence, their work ethic, or their moral character. Both were good people, working hard and trying their best. The fundamental difference existed in the energetic field from which they operated, the consciousness they brought to their financial lives, the frequency they were broadcasting into the world. The first brother's scarcity consciousness created a vibrational frequency that repelled abundance, making every financial success feel like a battle won through sheer force of will that could be lost at any moment. The second brother's abundance consciousness created a vibrational frequency that attracted prosperity naturally, making financial success feel like the path of least resistance rather than an uphill battle. This story reveals something profound about the hidden mechanics of wealth creation that most people never discover in their entire lives. Money isn't actually a physical object in the way we typically think about it, despite the fact that we can touch it and count it and hold it in our hands. Money is fundamentally an energetic pattern, a representation of value that responds with mathematical precision to your deepest mental and emotional patterns, your subconscious programming, your dominant vibrational frequency. Comment: energy creates reality. If this story is helping you see how two people from identical circumstances can create completely different financial realities through their internal programming alone. Your thoughts about money are not passive observations floating harmlessly through your mind, having no real impact on your circumstances. This is one of the most dangerous misconceptions people carry. The belief that thinking is somehow separate from creating, that your mental activity exists in one realm while your physical reality exists in another completely unconnected realm. The truth is far more profound and far more empowering once you understand it. Every time you think a thought about money, you're emitting a specific frequency into the field of consciousness that surrounds you. And that field responds by organizing circumstances, opportunities, and experiences that match your dominant frequency. Your subconscious mind is constantly, every single moment, scanning your environment for evidence that confirms your existing beliefs about money. This isn't something you do consciously or deliberately. It's an automatic function of how your brain processes reality, how it makes sense of the overwhelming amount of information coming at you every second. If you believe money is scarce and difficult to obtain, your subconscious will notice every piece of evidence that supports that belief. You'll see news stories about economic struggle. You'll hear conversations about financial hardship. You'll experience setbacks and challenges that seem to prove your belief is accurate. Meanwhile, your mind will unconsciously filter out or minimize evidence of abundance. Someone might tell you about an opportunity, but your programmed mind dismisses it before you even consciously consider it. You might walk past possibilities every day without seeing them because they don't match your internal filter. This selective attention then reinforces the original belief, creating a closed loop that perpetuates itself automatically unless you consciously interrupt it. You believe money is scarce, so you only see scarcity, which proves money is scarce, which strengthens the belief, which narrows your perception even further. Round and round in a self-reinforcing cycle that feels like objective reality, but is actually a subjective creation of your programmed filters. The opposite is equally true. Someone with abundance programming notices opportunities everywhere. They hear about possibilities, and their mind immediately starts generating ways to engage rather than reasons to dismiss. They experience the same economy, the same circumstances, the same world as someone in scarcity consciousness, but they're seeing a completely different reality because their filters are tuned to a different frequency. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding the mechanism behind this, because this is where ancient wisdom and modern science converge in a way that validates what the manuscript has been teaching for over a century. There's something that exists all around you right now in this very moment that most people never become aware of, even though it's constantly influencing their experience. It's called the unified field of consciousness, and understanding how it operates changes everything about how you approach creating wealth. This field isn't some mystical concept disconnected from reality. Quantum physics has been validating its existence for decades, discovering that consciousness and matter are far more interconnected than classical physics ever imagined. The field of consciousness surrounding you isn't passive or neutral, just sitting there waiting for things to happen to it. It's responsive, intelligent, creative in nature. It receives the vibrational signature you're broadcasting through your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and subconscious patterns, and it responds by organizing circumstances that match exactly with that frequency. This is why two people can be in the same room, at the same event, exposed to the same information, and have completely different experiences and opportunities emerge from it. They're broadcasting different frequencies, and the field is responding to each of them individually, creating personalized experiences that reflect their unique vibrational signatures. One person walks away with a life-changing connection. The other person experiences the same event as boring and unproductive. Same external circumstances, completely different outcomes, because the field was responding to different internal frequencies. This creates what appears to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's actually far more profound than that phrase suggests. You're not just predicting your future and then making it come true through your actions. You're literally broadcasting a frequency that the field receives and responds to by organizing reality in ways that match your signal. When you broadcast lack, you receive experiences of lack. When you broadcast fear of loss, situations arise that give you something to fear. When you broadcast unworthiness, opportunities pass you by as if you're invisible. Put "I'm shifting my frequency" in the comments if you're beginning to grasp how your internal state has been actively creating your external financial circumstances. Through this responsive field, the transformation begins the moment you truly understand something that liberates you from feeling like a victim of circumstances beyond your control. You're not helpless. You're not at the mercy of an unfair economy or bad luck or forces outside yourself. What you are is someone operating a sophisticated creative mechanism that's been running on autopilot with faulty programming installed decades ago by people who didn't know any better themselves. And once you recognize that this is the actual situation you're in, everything changes because you realize you have the power to deliberately install new programs aligned with abundance, rather than continuing to operate from the outdated programs aligned with scarcity. This isn't metaphorical or poetic language. This is a literal description of how your consciousness functions and how it creates your experience of reality. Your subconscious mind is essentially a program running in the background of your life, executing instructions that were written when you were young and impressionable, carrying out commands that made sense in the context where they were formed, but are completely sabotaging your success in your current circumstances. The breakthrough happens when you stop trying to force different results through willpower alone and instead address the actual source of the problem by reprogramming at the level where your reality is being generated. What makes this so powerful, so undeniably real once you understand it, is that modern science has caught up with what ancient wisdom has been teaching for millennia. Quantum physics, which studies the fundamental nature of reality at the smallest levels, has validated something that sounds impossible to people who learned classical physics in school. The observer affects the observed. Your consciousness doesn't just passively witness reality unfolding around you. Your consciousness actively participates in creating that reality at the most fundamental level. When scientists observed subatomic particles, they discovered something shocking. The act of observation itself influences how those particles behave. The mere presence of conscious attention affects physical matter in measurable ways. This isn't philosophy or spirituality pretending to be science. This is documented, repeatable, peer-reviewed scientific research that has forced physicists to completely rethink the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. What this means for your financial life is profound. When you modify your vibrational pattern, when you shift your subconscious programming from scarcity to abundance, you're not just changing your perspective or your mood or your attitude. You're literally altering the field of possibilities that will manifest in your physical experience. You're changing what the quantum field responds to and delivers back to you. You're participating at the deepest level in the creation of your financial circumstances rather than being a passive recipient of whatever randomly happens to you. This is why the sacred book that appears when you're ready focuses so heavily on internal transformation rather than external strategies. The external strategies can only work when the internal foundation supports them. You can learn the best financial techniques in the world, but if your consciousness is broadcasting scarcity and fear, those techniques will either fail to produce results or will produce temporary results that inevitably collapse back to match your underlying programming. The journey into this understanding requires you to let go of the victim mentality that our culture encourages. The belief that your circumstances are determining your consciousness rather than the other way around. Most people have it backwards. They believe they'll feel abundant when they have money, that they'll feel confident when they achieve success, that they'll feel worthy when external validation proves their worth. But the quantum field doesn't work that way. The field responds to what you're broadcasting now in this present moment, regardless of your current circumstances. This means you have access to transformation right now, today, not someday in the future when conditions are finally perfect. You can begin shifting your vibrational pattern immediately by becoming aware of the frequency you're currently broadcasting and consciously choosing to adjust it. You can start interrupting the automatic programs that have been running your financial life and installing new ones that serve your highest vision rather than limiting you to repeating the past. Now, I want to go even deeper into the practical application of these principles, because understanding the theory is valuable, but transformation requires knowing exactly how to work with your consciousness to create the shifts that generate different results in your actual lived experience, your bank account, your opportunities, your entire relationship with prosperity. Type "I'm the creator" if this understanding of your role as an active participant in creating your reality rather than a passive victim of circumstances is beginning to shift something fundamental in how you see yourself. The practical application begins with an analogy that makes this entire concept of frequency and vibration tangible and immediately understandable. Think of money and wealth as radio stations broadcasting on specific frequencies, all of them transmitting simultaneously right now in this very moment. These frequencies of prosperity are always available, always present in the field of possibilities surrounding you. Abundance isn't something that needs to be created or manifested from nothing. It already exists in infinite supply, constantly broadcasting its signal into the universe. The question that determines your financial reality isn't whether abundance exists, or whether you deserve it, or whether the economy allows it. And the question is simply whether your personal receiver is tuned to the right station. Imagine you desperately want to listen to a station broadcasting on a specific frequency. You want it so badly that you're thinking about it constantly, visualizing it, working hard to hear it, believing with all your heart that you deserve to hear it. But your radio dial is currently set to a completely different frequency. You can want that other station with every fiber of your being. You can work tirelessly, trying to access it. You can follow every piece of advice about how to receive it. But none of that matters because it is physically impossible for you to receive a transmission occurring on one frequency while your dial remains tuned to another frequency. The laws of physics simply don't allow it. This is exactly what's happening with money in your life right now. If your personal energetic field, the combined frequency of your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and subconscious programming, is tuned to the frequency of scarcity and struggle, then you literally cannot receive the abundance transmissions that are available at every moment. It doesn't matter how much you consciously want wealth. It doesn't matter how hard you work or how many strategies you try. As long as your internal dial remains stuck on the scarcity frequency, abundance will continue to elude you, not because you're being punished or because you don't deserve it, but simply because you're tuned to the wrong station and therefore cannot receive the signal that's constantly being broadcast. The truly liberating aspect of this understanding is that changing your financial reality doesn't require changing your external circumstances first. You don't need to wait for a better job, a lucky break, or perfect economic conditions before you can experience transformation. You need to adjust your internal dial to recalibrate the frequency you're broadcasting and receiving. When you shift your vibrational pattern from scarcity to abundance, your external circumstances must reorganize themselves to match that new frequency. It's not optional or theoretical. It's how the system works at the most fundamental level. The manuscript that we've been discussing, this sacred book that appears when you're ready to receive its wisdom, doesn't just explain these principles theoretically. It provides specific techniques for frequency recalibration that work directly with your nervous system, your neural pathways, and your energetic field to create lasting transformation rather than temporary motivation. These aren't vague suggestions or generic advice. These are precise practices designed to rewire how your consciousness relates to money at the deepest levels where your reality is actually being generated. What makes these techniques so powerful is that they work with biology and neuroscience, not against them. Modern brain research has discovered something extraordinary called neuroplasticity, which proves that your brain can literally rewire itself at any age through consistent practice. The neural patterns that have been running your financial life on autopilot, the pathways that automatically generate thoughts of scarcity and fear and limitation, these aren't permanent fixtures that you're stuck with forever. They can be weakened through disuse, while simultaneously strengthening new pathways that support abundance, confidence, and receptivity. The protocol outlined in the manuscript typically requires 21 days of consistent practice. This time frame isn't arbitrary or symbolic. 21 days is approximately how long it takes for new neural pathways to become established through repetition, for new patterns to move from conscious effort requiring willpower into automatic programming that runs naturally without you having to think about it. When you commit to this recalibration process for 3 weeks, you're literally installing new software into your subconscious operating system, replacing the outdated programs that have been limiting you with upgraded programs that align with the financial reality you truly desire. Comment, "I'm tuning to abundance," if this radio station analogy is helping you understand why you haven't been receiving the prosperity that's been broadcasting all around you this entire time. People who complete this recalibration process often report that something shifts very quickly, sometimes within the first few days of beginning the practice. It's not usually that their bank account suddenly explodes with money, though that can happen. More often, it's a shift in their internal experience that signals the transformation is taking root. The constant anxiety about money begins to ease. Opportunities they would have missed before suddenly become visible. Conversations lead to unexpected connections. Decisions that would have previously paralyzed them with fear now feel clear and manageable. This is evidence that their frequency is changing, that they're beginning to tune into a different station, and that their external reality is starting to reorganize itself to match this new internal state. But here's where we encounter something that challenges everything our action-obsessed culture has taught us about success and prosperity. This is the insight that, once you truly grasp it, can save you years of wasted effort and misdirected energy. Money doesn't actually come to you primarily because of what you do. It comes to you because of who you are. This sounds almost too simple, maybe even lazy or irresponsible to people who've been grinding themselves into exhaustion, trying to do more, work harder, hustle longer. But this apparently simple distinction contains a truth so profound that once people really understand it, their entire relationship with wealth transforms practically overnight. Think about this carefully. Our society is completely obsessed with action, with doing, with productivity and output and measurable effort. We worship at the altar of hustle culture, believing that if we just do enough, if we just work hard enough, if we just take enough action, eventually we'll be rewarded with abundance. And yet, when you look around with clear eyes, you notice something strange and undeniable. People who experience sustainable abundance, the kind that doesn't require constant struggle to maintain, aren't necessarily doing things that are fundamentally different from what you're doing. They're not working longer hours. They're often working significantly fewer hours. They're not employing some secret strategy you don't have access to. The real difference, the factor that creates such dramatically different outcomes, is that they are being a different version of themselves. Their internal state of being, their fundamental identity, their unconscious self-concept, these are aligned with prosperity rather than struggle. They don't have to try to act confident about money because at the identity level, they are someone for whom financial flow is natural. They don't have to force themselves to see opportunities because their internal programming automatically scans for and recognizes possibilities rather than problems. They don't have to fight against self-sabotage because their subconscious identity supports wealth rather than undermining it. The manuscript uses a perfect analogy that makes this concept immediately clear. Imagine you're trying to grow apples. You've got this vision of beautiful, delicious apples hanging from the branches of your tree. You're committed to making this happen, so you do everything right according to every gardening manual you've read. You fertilize the soil meticulously. You water consistently. You protect the tree from pests and harsh weather. You give it optimal sunlight. You're taking all the correct actions with excellent technique and dedicated care. But here's the problem that makes all your effort futile. You planted orange seeds. No matter how much effort you pour into nurturing that tree, no matter how perfect your technique or how dedicated your care, it will never produce apples. It's literally impossible because the tree's essential nature, its core programming, its fundamental identity is designed to produce oranges. You're not doing anything wrong with your actions. Your actions are actually excellent, but they're being applied to the wrong foundation, and so they can never generate the results you're seeking. This is exactly what's happening in your financial life if you're working hard without seeing proportional results. If your inner identity is programmed for scarcity at the seed level, you can learn all the right strategies, take all the recommended actions, work incredibly hard, make smart decisions, and all your efforts will only produce more scarcity experiences because that's what your identity programming is designed to create. The actions themselves aren't the problem. The foundation those actions are built upon is the problem, right? I'm changing my seeds. If you're recognizing that no amount of perfect action can overcome an identity that's programmed for limitation rather than abundance. The transformation that changes everything is when you go back to the seed level, to the identity level, to the core programming that determines what kind of tree you're growing in the first place. When you reprogram your subconscious identity from someone who struggles with money to someone for whom abundance flows naturally, suddenly the same actions you were taking before begin producing completely different results. Or more accurately, you naturally begin taking different actions without having to force yourself, because those actions flow organically from your new identity, from who you've become at the deepest level. And this brings us to perhaps the most crucial understanding of all, the insight that explains why so many intelligent, hard-working people remain financially stuck despite their best conscious efforts. Modern neuroscience has revealed something absolutely stunning about how your mind actually operates, something that changes everything once you truly grasp its implications. Up to 95% of your daily decisions are made by your subconscious mind, not your conscious mind. Think about what that means for a moment. 95%. That means only about 5% of your choices, behaviors, and responses are coming from your conscious awareness and deliberate thinking. The rest, the vast majority of what determines your life trajectory, is being run by subconscious programs that were installed primarily during your childhood, during moments of emotional intensity, through repetition and conditioning from authority figures, and through experiences that created lasting impressions on your developing psyche. These programs run automatically beneath your conscious awareness, driving your decisions, filtering your perceptions, determining your emotional responses, and ultimately creating the patterns of results you experience in your life. So you can sit down with the best intentions in the world and create brilliant financial strategies in your conscious mind. You can set clear goals, make detailed plans, commit yourself fully to changing your financial situation. You can have access to the best advice, the most sophisticated investment knowledge, the perfect business opportunity. But if your subconscious programming, that 95% that's actually running the show, is aligned with scarcity, lack, unworthiness, or fear around money, you will constantly and consistently sabotage your own progress without even realizing you're doing it. The sabotage doesn't look dramatic or obvious. It's subtle, insidious, disguised as logic or reasonable caution. You'll find yourself making decisions that seem perfectly rational in the moment, but that consistently steer you away from prosperity. You'll miss opportunities because something made you hesitate at the crucial moment. You'll create problems or drama that distract you just when you're on the verge of a breakthrough. You'll unconsciously align yourself with people or situations that reinforce your limitations rather than expand your possibilities. One of the most powerful examples of how this subconscious programming operates is what the manuscript calls the financial glass ceiling. Your subconscious mind establishes an invisible limit on how much wealth you're allowed to have, and this limit is based primarily on your reference models from your formative years. If nobody in your family or immediate community ever earned beyond a certain amount, if the highest income you regularly witnessed growing up was a particular level, your subconscious records that as the maximum allowed level for someone like you. Going beyond that invisible ceiling feels dangerous at a deep, primal level. It feels like you'd be abandoning your tribe, betraying your roots, becoming someone foreign and disconnected from where you came from. So even as you consciously pursue greater wealth, even as you work hard and make progress, your subconscious finds ways to keep you safely beneath that ceiling. You might get close, tantalizingly close, only to experience some setback that brings you back down. Or you might plateau at a certain income level and find yourself unable to break through no matter what strategies you try. This isn't because you lack ability or because the ceiling is real in any objective sense. It's because your identity programming has established that boundary as the safe zone, and your subconscious is designed to keep you safe, to maintain consistency with your self-concept, even when that self-concept is limiting and painful. The breakthrough happens when you recognize these invisible ceilings aren't real limitations of the universe. They're artificial boundaries created by programming that can be changed once you know how to access and reprogram at that foundational level. Type, "I'm breaking my ceiling," if you're beginning to recognize an invisible limit in your own financial life that might be coming from subconscious programming rather than actual reality. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding how this subconscious limitation actually operates in your daily life, because once you can see the mechanism clearly, you gain the power to change it. The financial glass ceiling we just discussed operates through what the manuscript calls your financial thermostat, and this analogy makes everything suddenly clear in a way that abstract concepts never could. You know how a thermostat works in your home. You set it to a specific temperature, and no matter what happens, the system automatically adjusts to maintain that setting. If the room gets too hot, the air conditioning kicks in to cool it down. If it gets too cold, the heating activates to warm it back up. The thermostat is constantly monitoring and making adjustments to return to its programmed temperature, maintaining consistency regardless of external fluctuations. Your subconscious mind has a financial thermostat set to a specific level of wealth that feels safe, familiar, and aligned with your identity. This setting was established years ago based on your childhood experiences, your family's financial reality, the messages you absorbed about what people like you are allowed to have. And no matter how much you temporarily increase your income through a new job, a salary raise, a business success, or even a windfall like an inheritance or lottery win, if that new level exceeds your thermostat setting, your subconscious will automatically activate mechanisms to bring you back down to your programmed level. This is why lottery winners often end up broke within a few years despite receiving millions of dollars. It's why people who get significant raises somehow find that their expenses mysteriously increase to match their new income, leaving them feeling just as financially stretched as before. It's why business owners sabotage themselves just when they're on the verge of breaking through to the next level of success. The thermostat is doing its job, maintaining the temperature it's been programmed to maintain, protecting you from the discomfort and identity crisis that would come from existing at a wealth level that contradicts your deep programming. The problem isn't that the thermostat is broken or malfunctioning. The problem is that the setting is wrong. You're trying to heat the room through external means, applying temporary boosts that create temporary increases in temperature, but the thermostat keeps pulling everything back to the original setting because that's precisely what it's designed to do. All your effort, all your strategies, all your hard work are being undermined by an invisible force that you didn't even know existed. The key to sustainable financial transformation isn't finding ways to temporarily increase your income or accumulate more assets. That's just heating the room, and the thermostat will always correct back to its setting eventually. The key is reprogramming the thermostat itself, adjusting your internal settings to match the level of abundance you consciously desire. When you successfully reprogram your financial thermostat to a higher setting, you don't have to force or struggle to maintain wealth. Your subconscious automatically works to maintain the new level just as diligently as it previously worked to maintain the old level. The reprogramming process begins with something so simple that most people dismiss its importance. Yet it's one of the most powerful tools you have for shifting your financial reality. It starts with the words you use every single day to describe your relationship with money. And I'm not talking about formal affirmations or scripted positive statements. I'm talking about the casual, automatic language that flows out of your mouth without conscious thought. The phrases that have become so habitual you don't even notice you're saying them anymore. Words aren't just sounds or symbols we use to communicate information to other people. At a fundamental level, words are vibrational patterns with specific frequencies that create physical changes in your neurology and energetic field. Every time you speak a phrase or even think it silently, you're literally carving neural grooves in your brain, establishing patterns that become more automatic and more powerful with each repetition. You're also creating energetic signatures in your electromagnetic field that broadcast into the quantum field surrounding you, attracting experiences that resonate with those frequencies. The phrases most people use habitually when talking about money are devastating to their financial reality, yet they repeat them dozens of times a day without realizing they're issuing direct commands to their subconscious mind and to the creative forces of the universe. When you say, "I can't afford it," you're not making a neutral observation about your current bank balance. You're declaring a fundamental limitation, closing a door, instructing your subconscious that this is a boundary you cannot cross, programming your reality to match that statement of lack. Comment: "My words create wealth." If you're beginning to recognize how your habitual language about money might have been programming limitation into your reality without you even noticing. The same thing happens with phrases like, "That's too expensive for me," "I never have enough money," "Money doesn't come easily to me," or "I'm just not good with finances." These aren't descriptions of reality, they're declarations that program reality, they're commands that your subconscious takes literally and then works tirelessly to prove true, creating experiences that validate the statements you keep repeating. Your brain is fundamentally a problem-solving and pattern-completing machine. When you give it a statement like, "I can't afford it," it stops looking for solutions because you've declared that no solution exists. The transformation in your financial reality can begin immediately, right now, simply by consciously interrupting these limiting language patterns and replacing them with expansive alternatives. And this isn't about lying to yourself or pretending you have money when you don't. It's about fundamentally shifting the energetic quality of your engagement with financial possibilities. Instead of saying, "I can't afford it," which slams the door shut on possibility, try this reformulation. "How can I create the resources to acquire this if I really want it?" Notice how different that feels in your body as you say it. The first statement contracts your energy, closes your perception, triggers a stress response in your nervous system. The second statement expands your awareness, opens your perception, activates your creative problem-solving capabilities. It's not declaring that you already have the money. It's opening the question of how you might create it, which is an entirely different energetic transaction. This linguistic shift literally activates different neural pathways in your brain. When you declare, "I can't afford it," your prefrontal cortex essentially shuts down the search function. Case closed. Problem unsolvable. Move on. But when you ask, "How can I create the resources for this?" your brain immediately begins scanning your memory, your environment, your network, your skills, looking for answers to the question you've posed. Neurological resources that remained dormant under the old paradigm suddenly activate, making connections you couldn't see before, recognizing opportunities that were invisible to you yesterday. The sacred manuscript provides an entire framework for this linguistic reprogramming, but it goes far beyond just changing your words. It teaches you a practice that works at an even deeper level, something called the abundant receptivity meditation. This is fundamentally different from traditional visualization techniques that most people have tried and found ineffective. Those typical manifestation practices usually have you visualizing what you want, imagining yourself receiving wealth, picturing your goals as if they're in the future waiting for you to arrive. The problem with that approach is that it continuously reinforces the energetic state of not having, of desiring something that's separate from you, of waiting for abundance to arrive someday. You're focused on the lack of it now while hoping for it later, which broadcasts exactly the wrong frequency. The abundant receptivity meditation works from a completely different premise. Instead of focusing on what you want to receive in the future, this practice guides you to enter the vibrational state of having already received it right now in this present moment. You're not asking the universe for prosperity or begging for abundance or hoping wealth will come to you. You're tuning your entire nervous system, your emotional body, your energetic field to the exact frequency of someone who already lives in abundance, who already experiences wealth as their natural state, who already embodies the consciousness of prosperity. This subtle shift in the meditation practice creates fundamental transformation in your vibrational field because you're not reinforcing lack while pretending to pursue abundance. You're actually installing the neurological patterns, the emotional signatures, the energetic codes of someone who is already prosperous. Your subconscious mind, which doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experience and actual experience, begins wiring itself according to this new pattern. Your nervous system starts carrying the relaxed confidence of someone who knows abundance is always available, rather than the tension of someone constantly worried about scarcity. The practice involves entering a deeply relaxed state and then systematically engaging all your senses to experience what it actually feels like to live in abundance right now, not in some imagined future. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this alignment actually means in terms of how you approach your work and your efforts, because this is where most people encounter massive resistance to these ideas, thinking they sound passive or unrealistic when they're actually describing the most efficient path to sustainable prosperity. Type, "I receive abundance now," if you're ready to shift from seeking future prosperity to embodying present abundance through these practices. There's one particular practice from the manuscript that stands out for its simplicity and profound effectiveness, something you can begin applying immediately without any special equipment, training, or circumstances. It's called the prosperity breathing technique, and it combines neurological recalibration with energetic reprogramming in a way that takes less than 5 minutes, yet can shift your entire state when practiced consistently. The technique works by simultaneously activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which governs your rest and restoration responses, while recalibrating the vibrational frequency you're broadcasting about abundance. When you're in chronic stress about money, which most people are without even realizing it, your sympathetic nervous system stays activated in fight or flight mode. This state of constant tension literally shuts down the parts of your brain responsible for creative thinking, opportunity recognition, and intuitive decision-making. You're operating from survival consciousness, not prosperity consciousness. The breathing pattern itself is deceptively simple, but precisely calibrated to shift your physiological state. You begin by finding a comfortable position, placing one hand over your heart and the other over your abdomen, so you can feel the rhythm of your breath. Then you engage a specific pattern. Inhale slowly through your nose for 4 seconds, hold that breath for 7 seconds, then exhale completely through your mouth for 8 seconds. This particular rhythm isn't arbitrary or randomly chosen. The extended exhale activates your vagus nerve, which signals your entire nervous system to shift out of stress mode and into a state of calm receptivity. In this relaxed state, your subconscious becomes more accessible, more open to new programming, less defended by the critical factor that normally rejects information contradicting your existing beliefs. But the breathing pattern is only half of the practice. While you're breathing in this rhythm, you're simultaneously engaging your imagination in a very specific way. As you inhale, you visualize breathing in golden light, the pure essence of universal abundance flowing into your lungs and then spreading throughout your entire body. You feel this light filling every cell, every organ, every system with the energetic signature of prosperity. Then as you exhale, you're consciously releasing all the dark, heavy, limiting patterns you've been carrying. You visualize these old programs, these scarcity beliefs, these fear-based patterns, leaving your body as dark smoke or heavy energy that dissolves into nothingness as it exits. With each breath cycle, you're literally installing abundance consciousness while removing limitation consciousness, creating space for the new by releasing the old. When done consistently, this practice can rewire the neural patterns in your brain related to money, shifting your baseline frequency from scarcity to abundance. This brings us to the ultimate truth that the manuscript reveals, the foundation upon which all the other principles rest. Abundance is not something that will arrive in your future when conditions are finally right, when you've earned enough, or suffered enough, or worked hard enough to deserve it. Abundance is available right now in this present moment, regardless of what your current circumstances look like, regardless of your bank balance, regardless of your debts or challenges. The transformation that changes everything is when you stop postponing your experience of abundance until some external milestone is reached, and instead consciously choose to cultivate the emotional states of abundance, fullness, and gratitude right now. The universe doesn't respond to your desires, your wishes, your goals, or your plans. It responds exclusively to your dominant vibrational frequency, to the energetic signal you're broadcasting through your emotional state, your beliefs, your habitual thought patterns. If you're constantly in a state of "I'll be abundant when," you're broadcasting lack, postponement, future orientation rather than present abundance. And the universe can only give you more of what you're currently vibrating, which means more waiting, more lack, more future orientation instead of present experience. By consciously choosing to inhabit the vibrational state of abundance right now, regardless of external circumstances, you establish the frequency that naturally attracts resonant experiences of prosperity. This isn't delusion or denial of current reality. It's understanding that your emotional state creates your vibrational frequency, and your frequency determines what you attract and perceive. When you feel abundant now, you notice opportunities that were invisible before. You make different decisions. You broadcast a different signal, and the field responds by organizing circumstances that match your new frequency. Now, I want to go even deeper into how you actually make this shift from future-oriented abundance to present-moment abundance, because this is where the sacred knowledge becomes lived experience rather than intellectual understanding. Write, "My time is now," in the comments if you're ready to stop waiting for perfect conditions and start embodying prosperity consciousness in this present moment. There's one particular practice from the manuscript that stands out for its simplicity and profound effectiveness, something you can begin applying immediately without any special equipment, training, or circumstances. It's called the prosperity breathing technique, and it combines neurological recalibration with energetic reprogramming in a way that takes less than 5 minutes, yet can shift your entire state when practiced consistently. The technique works by simultaneously activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which governs your rest and restoration responses, while recalibrating the vibrational frequency you're broadcasting about abundance. When you're in chronic stress about money, which most people are without even realizing it, your sympathetic nervous system stays activated in fight or flight mode. This state of constant tension literally shuts down the parts of your brain responsible for creative thinking, opportunity recognition, and intuitive decision-making. You're operating from survival consciousness, not prosperity consciousness. The breathing pattern itself is deceptively simple, but precisely calibrated to shift your physiological state. You begin by finding a comfortable position, placing one hand over your heart and the other over your abdomen so you can feel the rhythm of your breath. Then you engage a specific pattern. Inhale slowly through your nose for 4 seconds, hold that breath for 7 seconds, then exhale completely through your mouth for 8 seconds. This particular rhythm isn't arbitrary or randomly chosen. The extended exhale activates your vagus nerve, which signals your entire nervous system to shift out of stress mode and into a state of calm receptivity. In this relaxed state, your subconscious becomes more accessible, more open to new programming, less defended by the critical factor that normally rejects information, contradicting your existing beliefs. But the breathing pattern is only half of the practice. While you're breathing in this rhythm, you're simultaneously engaging your imagination in a very specific way. As you inhale, you visualize breathing in golden light, the pure essence of universal abundance flowing into your lungs and then spreading throughout your entire body. You feel this light filling every cell, every organ, every system with the energetic signature of prosperity. Then, as you exhale, you're consciously releasing all the dark, heavy, limiting patterns you've been carrying. You visualize these old programs, these scarcity beliefs, these fear-based patterns leaving your body as dark smoke or heavy energy that dissolves into nothingness as it exits. With each breath cycle, you're literally installing abundance consciousness while removing limitation consciousness, creating space for the new by releasing the old. When done consistently, this practice can rewire the neural patterns in your brain related to money, shifting your baseline frequency from scarcity to abundance. This brings us to the ultimate truth that the manuscript reveals, the foundation upon which all the other principles rest. Abundance is not something that will arrive in your future when conditions are finally right, when you've earned enough or suffered enough or worked hard enough to deserve it. Abundance is available right now in this present moment, regardless of what your current circumstances look like, regardless of your bank balance, regardless of your debts or challenges. The transformation that changes everything is when you stop postponing your experience of abundance until some external milestone is reached, and instead consciously choose to cultivate the emotional states of abundance, fullness, and gratitude right now. The universe doesn't respond to your desires, your wishes, your goals, or your plans. It responds exclusively to your dominant vibrational frequency, to the energetic signal you're broadcasting through your emotional state, your beliefs, your habitual thought patterns. If you're constantly in a state of "I'll be abundant when," you're broadcasting lack, postponement, future orientation, rather than present abundance. And the universe can only give you more of what you're currently vibrating, which means more waiting, more lack, more future orientation, instead of present experience. By consciously choosing to inhabit the vibrational state of abundance right now, regardless of external circumstances, you establish the frequency that naturally attracts resonant experiences of prosperity. This isn't delusion or denial of current reality. It's understanding that your emotional state creates your vibrational frequency, and your frequency determines what you attract and perceive. When you feel abundant now, you notice opportunities that were invisible before. You make different decisions. You broadcast a different signal. And the field responds by organizing circumstances that match your new frequency. Now, I want to go even deeper into how you actually make this shift from future-oriented abundance to present-moment abundance, because this is where the sacred knowledge becomes lived experience rather than intellectual understanding. Write "My time is now" in the comments if you're ready to stop waiting for perfect conditions and start embodying prosperity consciousness in this present moment.